What if every text, every notification, and every digital alert you trusted was nothing more than a carefully woven lie? In a quiet Illinois suburb, a tech-savvy girlfriend executed a sinister plan with cold precision. On an ordinary day, as the neighborhood awoke to routine life, she set the stage by flooding her cheating boyfriend's phone with alarming messages, warnings of violent drug runners closing in on him. Each fabricated alert, each doctored video clip, was designed to shatter his sense of security and warp his reality. Unbeknownst to him, his every digital interaction had been manipulated to stoke a growing paranoia that would ultimately drive him to commit an unspeakable act. What began as a series of seemingly innocuous texts soon escalated into a nightmare, turning a troubled mind into an instrument of destruction. That fateful day, consumed by a terror born not of genuine threat, but of relentless digital deceit, he set out to protect himself by targeting an unsuspecting family of 4. In a tragic twist, the very person who orchestrated the chaos, his cunning girlfriend, was left entwined in a web of her own making, as he later turned on her before ending his own life. The brutal massacre not only shattered lives, but also ignited a storm of controversy over the power of technology to manipulate human behavior. How could one person's lethal fabrication tip the scales so drastically that innocent lives were lost? Welcome to True Crime Acts, where we look into the hidden truths behind some of the most chilling real-life events. Our mission is to uncover the stories that shock, educate, and spark change, reminding us that behind every headline is a victim, a family, and a ripple effect felt by an entire community. If you find this journey as important as we do, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell to ensure you never miss another gripping exploration into the depths of human behavior. In a seemingly ordinary Illinois neighborhood, life moved along in predictable rhythms. Mark, a 27-year-old man known to his friends as a charming yet troubled soul, lived a life that, on the surface, appeared unremarkable. He was a man who had struggled with infidelity and insecurity, a man whose heart bore the scars of past betrayals. His girlfriend, Rebecca, was as tech-savvy as she was enigmatic. With her quick wit and remarkable digital skills, she had built an online persona that masked her darker ambitions. Mark's life was filled with the usual ups and downs of a modern relationship. They'd share dinner dates at local diners, spend weekends at small-town events, and talk long into the night. Yet behind the smiles, a subtle tension lay dormant. Mark's cheating ways, though known to a select few, were something he had grown accustomed to. He carried an air of defiance, believing that his charm would always keep him in control. But in Rebecca's eyes, control meant more than persuasion. It meant engineering reality to her advantage. Rebecca was a master of digital manipulation. Quietly, she had built a sophisticated network of fake profiles, doctored images, and fabricated messages. She knew how to access social media trends and exploit algorithms to shape perception. In her world, truth was a construct, one that could be bent, twisted, and ultimately weaponized. Her motive was not merely jealousy or a simple desire for loyalty. She craved a new beginning, a way to escape the mediocrity of their failing relationship and start over with someone else entirely. As the morning progressed, an unsuspecting Mark left for work, leaving behind a home filled with muted tension and secrets. Neither he nor anyone else in the neighborhood had any inkling that the calm before the storm was about to shatter. Rebecca, already at her computer, began orchestrating a plan that would forever alter Mark's destiny and the lives of others. Could it be that the seeds of manipulation, planted with such care, would sprout into something as dark and irreversible as a massacre? Rebecca wasn't like other women in town. Beneath her charming smile and confident demeanor was a mind wired for technology. A true digital native, she used her expertise not just to entertain, but to control. Over the past few months, she had carefully crafted a persona that extended far beyond the small-town dating scene. In online forums and private chats, her words sparkled with the allure of a secret power, one that could rewrite narratives and distort reality. Every smartphone notification, every meticulously scheduled social media post was a calculated step in her plan. Rebecca began by planting subtle hints of danger in Mark's digital world. She created fake text message threads and fabricated news alerts that claimed violent drug runners were targeting him. Her savvy manipulation of apps and online news feeds meant that every time Mark checked his phone, he was met with an avalanche of ominous messages. The technology she wielded was not just a tool, it was a weapon. For Rebecca, the motive was clear. She wanted a fresh start, a life with someone new, someone who wouldn't be tethered to the past. Mark's habitual infidelity had become too much to bear, and in her eyes, he was a weak link holding her back. With every bit of digital deception she deployed, she aimed to shatter his sense of security. Her manipulation was precise, feeding his paranoia until he was convinced that his life was in imminent danger. In a world where digital footprints are both ephemeral and omnipresent, Rebecca turned every bite of information into evidence of a looming threat. Was this cunning use of technology merely an act of desperation or a cold, calculated strategy to force a gruesome outcome? Could the power of digital manipulation push a person beyond the point of no return? Mark, a 27-year-old man with a complicated history, was both confident and conflicted. Despite his charm and self-assured exterior, he carried deep insecurities born from years of betrayal. His reputation as a ladies' man was well known, yet his personal life was riddled with broken promises and lingering doubts about his own worth. Mark believed he was in control, until the day Rebecca's digital deception began to erode his sense of safety. Every day, Mark's phone buzzed with notifications he assumed were genuine. Urgent warnings, alarming news alerts, and messages that painted a picture of impending danger. Slowly, the false reality Rebecca had constructed seeped into his consciousness. The carefully orchestrated digital lies began to warp his perceptions, turning routine moments into episodes of terror. At work, he found himself distracted, his mind wandering to thoughts of drug runners lurking in the shadows, ready to pounce. Even mundane tasks turned into anxiety-ridden endeavors. Friends urged him to ignore the messages, dismissing them as mere coincidences or glitches. But Mark's growing paranoia was impossible to ignore. Each notification was like a drop of poison slowly corroding his reality. His internal conflict was palpable. Was this the consequence of his own failings, or was it the result of a manipulation so masterful it shattered his grasp on truth? As the tension built within him, Mark began to lose sleep and question every whisper of sound around him. The boundaries between real danger and digitally manufactured fear blurred, until he could no longer distinguish fact from fiction. In a desperate bid for self-preservation, he started to isolate himself from those who once comforted him. Was Mark's descent into paranoia truly the product of personal vulnerability, or had Rebecca's sinister manipulation irreversibly altered his perception of reality? Rebecca meticulously constructed a digital web designed to trap Mark in a spiral of fear. Using her technical expertise, she hacked into trusted news feeds, created fake alerts, and even manipulated social media to simulate the presence of violent drug runners in Mark's vicinity. Every device in his life began to echo her carefully curated messages. Each notification, each fabricated alert, nudged him closer to the edge. Her strategy was cold and calculated. Rebecca knew that a mind already fragile from infidelity and self-doubt would react to even the slightest hint of danger. With every text she sent, every doctored image she uploaded, she stoked the flames of paranoia. The digital landscape around Mark became a minefield of false information, a labyrinth of fear that he couldn't escape. For Rebecca, the stakes were simple. If she could convince Mark that his life was in imminent danger, he would be driven to take drastic action that would clear the path for her own plans. She exploited every bit of technology at her disposal. Her smartphone, her laptop, even social media influencers whose posts she subtly altered to fit her narrative. In her mind, this wasn't merely manipulation, it was a revolution. By rewriting reality through digital artifice, she intended to force Mark into a situation where his only choice was to defend himself against an enemy that existed only in the pixelated realm of her lies. Was this elaborate scheme a desperate bid for freedom, or was it the calculated beginning of a horror that would soon consume innocent lives? By the time the sun set that fateful day, the digital deceptions had accumulated into a torrent of paranoia. Mark's world, once predictable, had become a swirling vortex of fear. Every beep, every chime from his phone was now a harbinger of impending doom. His once rational mind now teetered on the edge of complete hysteria. Friends noticed his increasing isolation, his reluctance to join them for dinner, his frequent absences from work, and the haunted look that now clouded his eyes. The false alarms Rebecca had meticulously set in motion began to feel all too real. In the quiet moments before sleep, Mark's mind raced with visions of violent drug runners lurking around every corner, figments so vivid that he could almost feel their cold presence. His heart pounded in his chest as he scrolled through the fabricated evidence, each new alert a nail in the coffin of his sanity. Every text message, every digital notification fanned the flames of his terror until the boundaries between reality and digital illusion blurred irreversibly. The pressure became unbearable. Mark's internal monologue, once filled with doubts about his infidelities, was now dominated by a single overwhelming thought. He had to act, and act quickly, before the imagined threat consumed him entirely. In a moment of desperate clarity, or perhaps irrevocable madness, Mark resolved that he had no choice but to eliminate the source of his terror. Was his decision the tragic consequence of digital deception, or had the seeds of paranoia been sown long before the texts began to flood his phone? At the breaking point, when the pressure of paranoia had become too great, Mark found himself facing a decision that would change everything. Every fabricated alert, every digital warning, had convinced him that the threat was not just real, but imminent. The world he knew had been replaced by a nightmarish vision where dangerous criminals lurked in every shadow, ready to strike at any moment. In his mind, the only way to regain control was to take extreme action. Action that would eliminate the source of his terror once and for all. In that solitary, agonizing moment, Mark resolved that he must act decisively. His trembling fingers clutched the weapon as his mind raced with thoughts of survival and retribution. The digital lies that had ensnared him now demanded a brutal response, a misguided attempt to defend himself from an enemy that existed only in the realm of manipulated data. He envisioned the threat as a monstrous presence looming over him, one he could only vanquish through violence. But as he stepped toward what he believed was his destiny, a path paved with paranoia and hatred, questions echoed in his mind. Had the digital deception taken root so deeply that no one could pull him back? Was there any escape from the spiral of fear that had consumed him, or was this moment destined to become irreversible tragedy? In the dead of night, fueled by the digital lies and the mounting paranoia that had pushed him over the edge, Mark carried out an act that defies comprehension. Convinced that eliminating the threat would secure his own survival, he set his sights on a family of 4, an innocent household that had never done anything to provoke his hatred. Under the cover of darkness, he stormed their home, his mind clouded by the images his phone had forced upon him. Every moment seemed orchestrated by the relentless echo of false alarms, every step a descent deeper into madness. In an act that shocked the nation, Mark slaughtered the family with ruthless efficiency. The sound of a door slamming shut, followed by muffled screams and a final, chilling silence, captured the horror of that night. As the echoes of his violence subsided, the scene was left in a grim stillness, one that would haunt the community for years to come. In that final moment of destruction, the digital deception that had fueled Mark's paranoia crystallized into something far worse, a deliberate, premeditated massacre of innocent lives. Was this truly an act of self-defense against an imagined threat, or the tragic result of manipulation and hatred that consumed an entire soul? In the wake of the massacre, the town was plunged into chaos. Emergency responders rushed to the scene as the full horror of the night's events began to sink in. The bodies of the 4 innocent victims were discovered amid the wreckage of a once peaceful home. Families, friends, and neighbors were left in stunned disbelief, unable to reconcile the brutality of the act with the normalcy of their everyday lives. Local authorities immediately launched an investigation into the grisly events. Digital forensic experts unearthed the false alarms and manipulated messages that had driven Mark to commit these unspeakable acts. His phone, a silent witness, revealed the trail of deception. Messages that painted a false narrative of impending danger, twisting reality until paranoia became indistinguishable from truth. The community was divided. Some were outraged that such a tragedy could be orchestrated through a web of lies, while others struggled to understand how a vulnerable mind could be so corrupted by digital deceit. Social media exploded with debates, hashtags emerging that demanded accountability and called for reforms in digital literacy and mental health support. As law enforcement moved swiftly to apprehend Mark and secure the scene, the nation began to question, how could a system meant to protect us from violence allow digital manipulation to morph into real-life tragedy? Mark's trial quickly became a national spectacle, a battleground where the power of digital deception was pitted against the quest for justice. Prosecutors presented a mountain of evidence, every manipulated text, every fake news alert, every digital breadcrumb that revealed how Rebecca had orchestrated the chaos. They argued that this wasn't a spontaneous act of a troubled mind. It was a calculated massacre born from manipulation and premeditation. The defense, on the other hand, sought to portray Mark as a victim of his own vulnerabilities, a young man whose fragile psyche had been exploited by a woman with a dark agenda. They argued that his upbringing, his personal failings, and the constant barrage of digital lies had left him no choice but to act in a way that, while horrific, was the inevitable culmination of manipulated fear. Throughout the trial, the nation was polarized. Some argued that true accountability lay in exposing Rebecca's masterful manipulation, while others insisted that Mark, regardless of his youth, was responsible for the bloodshed. The trial raised urgent questions about the power of technology, the responsibilities of digital citizens, and how far one's beliefs, whether sincerely held or maliciously engineered, could drive a person to murder. In the end, as the jury retired to deliberate, the question remained, can we ever truly separate a manipulated mind from the heinous act it commits? In the aftermath of this unspeakable tragedy, the scars remain, not only on the victims' families, but also on a society forced to confront the dark potential of digital manipulation. Mark's actions, driven by the toxic blend of manipulated fear and personal insecurities, ended 4 innocent lives and shattered the promise of a future that could have been. Meanwhile, Rebecca's cold, calculated deception left a community questioning the safety of our digital world and the power of extremist ideologies when they are amplified by modern technology. As the trial concluded and Mark received his sentence, the conversation began anew on how technology can both connect and destroy, on the responsibilities we hold in an increasingly digital age, and on the urgent need for awareness and reform to protect the vulnerable. His case serves as a stark reminder that in the wrong hands, digital deception is not harmless. It can be lethal. This story forces us to ask, in an age where every text and notification can be weaponized, how much are we willing to risk before we confront the dark side of technology? Comment below and share your thoughts. What measures do you believe are essential to protect our society from the lethal power of digital manipulation? In the wake of this unimaginable tragedy, we are left with a stark reminder. Every act of hate and every manipulated lie carries consequences that ripple far beyond a single moment. The story we've uncovered today forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the power of digital deception, the influence of extremist ideologies, and the devastating impact of intolerance on innocent lives. If we truly believe that no life should be lost to hatred, and that every victim deserves justice, then we must all commit to questioning the narratives that shape our world and to demanding accountability from those in power. Your voice matters in this conversation. Every comment, every shared story, every call for change helps to ensure that tragedies like this are neither forgotten nor repeated. If this investigation has stirred something in you, if it has made you question how digital lies can morph into deadly realities, then please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Join our community of truth seekers. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe that increased digital literacy and proactive mental health support could prevent future tragedies? Or is society destined to repeat these dark chapters until we finally confront our own hidden biases? Let's use our voices to spark change and ensure that every victim's story is heard.